Hello, I'm ABC 10 meteorologist Rob Carlmark with a live update on our ABC 10 Plus streaming app as well as on our TV app. And this is going to be a very important update because, look, it's Friday. We're getting ready for the weekend, and a lot of good things have happened because of our very busy week. In fact, you can go back to this last weekend when we had on and off rain through Saturday and Sunday. Not the best thing to happen on a weekend, but we were so far behind because of our very dry January that we really needed a game-changing pattern, and that's exactly what we have. Now, the storms that we've seen recently are wrapping up. We're going to go through a period of dry weather, but by the end of next week, in fact, by the middle of next week, it is game on, and we're looking at more rain and snow. Now, I always like to start with this because, we get a lot of flack about some of these long-range forecasts. Even going 10, 14 days out is somewhat of a risk. Imagine going months and months out. That's what a La Nina forecast or El Nino forecast relies a lot about. You're looking at basically the three prime months of winter, December, January, and February. And if it doesn't pan out or something's off in one of those months or one of those patterns, then the whole thing is thrown off. With that said, traditionally with a La Nina pattern, we're looking at drier than normal conditions for Southern California and a lot of the Southwest, and wetter than normal for the Pacific Northwest to about far Northern California. Now, honestly, most years don't line up exactly like this. There's usually something off. But look at this. This is precipitation so far for the water year, which began on October 1st. These are areas right around normal, the yellow. Green and blue is either above normal or far above normal. And that's exactly what we're looking at with the La Nina pattern. And then obviously, as you get to these darker red colors, that's really far below normal. So that, folks, if this continued for the rest of the season, is classic La Nina. Now, as you would expect, we're looking at above average numbers, but I think you might be surprised how far above average. Redding in a typical year gets a lot of rain. It doesn't feel like that in the summer. It's one of the hottest places in California. It's just got one of the wildest climates out there. At any rate, they get about 33 inches of rain per year, which is solid. It's almost double what places like Sacramento get. At any rate, they're at 29.5 inches of rain, and Eureka's about 30 inches. So they are far and above normal. They've just been the center of most of these atmospheric rivers, and places like San Francisco, Sacramento, and even South Lake Tahoe, right in line with either being on average or a little bit behind. Same thing with Stockton, Modesto. But once you start to get to the south, you really see those numbers fall far, far behind. Now, this is one of the most important metrics that we have because usually when people say, hey, are we going to be fine for water this year? Are we going to go into a drought? Are we going to have some sort of issue once we get into the summer? And you usually don't even talk about reservoir levels until you get closer to April, because April really is the moment when we start to see the stormy cycles wind down. You might get a random big storm in April or even May, but they're few and far between. They usually don't change the numbers in a dramatic way. But we are in early to mid-February, and our reservoirs, when you add up the federal, state, and local reservoirs, are far above average. And in fact, a lot of them are at the max capacity of what they're legally allowed to have, because you need to have this buffer in order to absorb a very large stormy cycle. In other words, if you ran your reservoirs by running them all the way to the top in the middle of your wet season, and then all of a sudden you get a huge atmospheric river or two in a row, you cannot let out enough water fast enough to make room for what's coming in. So it's a buffer. This is called flood protection, and this is very important. Remember, we still have water that's coming in. Runoff takes a long time before it's totally done. We also have snowpack. Snowpack is about 30% of our water use in any given year, or water supply, I should say, and we still have all that to go. So we're in really good shape. I'm really not worried about the central and far northern California reservoirs. And that's really where almost all the very big ones are. So getting into our local weather, we've got some localized, very small, tiny little showers. Not a big deal at all. This equates to snow as well. And if you're waiting for the next big pattern to emerge, it's not going to be in the near term. Today, through the weekend, and the beginning of next week, we're just going to be dry. And then all of a sudden, these atmospheric river indicators start to line up. So now we're looking at Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It is not a direct link where you have a big area of low pressure and you're tapping into really wet air from the subtropics. That's your traditional strong atmospheric river. We're not seeing that. But what we are seeing is a return to more wet air getting pulled into the state for northern and at least central California. And what we're going to see with that is increased chances of rain, increased chances of snow. The fact that it's not a very steep angle that is going to hold back a lot of the warmer air, the high snow level events that we saw for the first two waves of this. So we're going to be expecting more snow out of this rather than rain. And that's really going to help the snowpack, because for all the metrics, snowpack is really the one thing that we're lacking in so far this season. Not for far northern California, but central, southern Sierra. Oh yeah, we need help with the snowpack big time. And this new pattern by the end of next week is going to help. Now, what we have right now is a lot of moisture in the air. You could just see it with splotchy areas of snow and with rain along the coast, but there isn't really anything driving it. There's not a huge area of low pressure forcing a lot of the lift that you need to get organized and steady rain or snow. What you are getting is sort of it's not artificial, but it's not coming from the atmosphere. It's coming from the change in elevation. So we call this orographic lift. And so what you're going to see is almost all the rain and snow chances are going to be based where the higher elevations are, in the mountains, in the foothills, the coastal range, Santa Cruz Mountains, a place where you have lift of the mountains to really wring out whatever's left out of the system, which there is not. So this is where we're seeing some leftover light to moderate rain in Monterey Bay area, a little bit for the Bay Area, San Francisco, East Bay, and then also for the Sierra, we've got about an hour or two left of the more steady light snow showers. So that's why it's all lit up in blue. There's just enough to make that happen with continued light snow for the next several hours, which translates into continued chain controls, lower visibility, steady snowfall, all of those bells and whistles of your classic winter storm. A couple more hours of that till about noon. Then that should drop as the system's just running out of moisture. Okay, what about the wind? The wind is still a big factor early in the morning, certainly for places along the crest of the Sierra. We're still seeing wind gusts up to 50, 60 miles per hour. But then later on today, the wind starts to subside. The winds are going to be fairly quiet, 5 to 10 miles per hour, no big whoop. And then we've got these breezy northwest winds that will show up tomorrow. Now, this is not a strong wind event at all, but it's just this background kind of cold wind that probably a lot of people are not paying attention to, because it's going to be sunny and it's going to be dry, which is really the headline, but you have to factor in a breezy north wind during the day that makes you feel colder than you normally would. So even though it's sunny and it's going to be in the 50s, a jacket is something you really want to think about if you're doing anything middle to the end of the day on your Saturday. At least it's dry though, and we get a chance to do whatever we want on the weekend, whether it's going to be playing in the snow or just kicking it in the valley. We've got fine weather for Saturday and for Sunday, but these breezy northwest winds will be with us in the background for at least a couple days. As we fast forward through the futurecast, notice that it's almost all the higher elevations, continuing very light snow starting to turn into flurries late in the day. In the valley spots, you should be clear. That little white band there is early morning fog for your Saturday. Anytime we're in a post-storm environment, the skies go clear and you don't have a lot of wind, that's prime for a fog to form. So watch out for that for early on Saturday. Probably not so much on Sunday, because the northwest winds is going to dry out that top ground layer. But that's what we're looking at through the weekend. When you're talking about patchy areas of fog or just a little bit of wind, that's a fine weekend forecast. I do want to fast forward, though, as we move into next week, because what we're getting from today till the middle of the day is just really light. It doesn't amount to anything at all. But once we get into Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, this is pretty legit. And remember, this is a colder storm. So when you start to move into the blues here, which equates to roughly about an inch of rain, the purples are 1.5 to 2 inches of liquid. And then once you start to get into the red, you just have to mentally switch that over into snow. Well, now we're talking about 2.5 to 3 inches of liquid. When you convert it over into snow, that's probably going to be about 2 to maybe 3 feet of snow. And that's going to be between Wednesday and Fridays. And that's pretty solid. So snow really is probably the headline of the next series of storms that's going to come in at the end of next week. Since things are quieting down, the Sacramento River is going to come up a little bit more, but it's come up substantially. Before all of this, it was at 7 feet. Now it's at 24 and about a half foot. It's going to come up a little bit more, far below even the monitor stage, and then it's going to slowly but surely start to come down. But there is a lot of water moving through the I Street location, which is downtown. Once you go farther north, because they're still having the reservoirs dump water because they just have too much in them at the moment, you start to see that there's just a lot more water there and some localized minor flooding. The big difference, by the way, the reason why we're not up here, the YOLO bypass, we have all these things that we've created to divert water and bleed it away because you don't want all that water going through the downtown location. There's just too many twists and turns, and there's just too much water moving through that spot. So there's things upstream, so to speak, that move water away, bringing us to a safe level in Sacramento. Now, once we go past the 10-day forecast, I just want to give you an early indication that it looks like at least through the third week of February, we're going to remain in this fairly active and colder pattern. So if you're a snow lover, things are looking pretty good. And just to go back to La Nina at the very beginning, leaning wetter, where Pacific Northwest to about far northern California. Maybe Southern California gets one little taste of this, but overall, where most of the action is going to be central Northern California. So enjoy the nice sunny weekend. It's going to be great. We've got Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, active stormy pattern. Perhaps a new one emerging on Sunday, but that one just looks a little bit warmer and not as wet. So we'll keep an eye on that one. Now getting to the snow forecast, since it is a Friday and a big part of Northern California life is the snow. You can see cars flowing along just fine there at 80 Donner Lake. At the roundabout, this is the turn to get to Kirkwood. You can see things are moving along just fine. They plowed the roads, looking pretty good. I just updated these numbers a few minutes ago. Now we are officially back above average for Northern California snowpack. This is important. We're about 3/4 of the way to full snowpack, what you'd expect to see April 1st for the Northern Sierra. So we're well on our way. Always nice to see that. But then you see the numbers start to go down. It really has been almost entirely based in Central and Northern California, where these atmospheric rivers and all the precip has been happening. So planning your weekend ahead. At the moment, there's chain controls. It's very possible this will last for many more hours into the afternoon. It all depends on what's going on the ground. There's traction control issues or what have you. So plan on chain controls at least being a reality for your Friday, but it's likely to go down as a possibility deeper into the weekend. So by Sunday, probably not, but I would bring chains just in case, because recent snow, also icy conditions early on in the morning. Very impressive snowfall totals. This is just with that last basically 24-hour snow event. Right around a little bit less than a foot of snow, some places a little bit more, but all adding up to good, high-quality snow. That's the rest of your Friday. Great weekend ahead. It's going to be busy. Watch where you park. You can't park anywhere you want anymore. Sometimes you have to have reservations for resorts, or some of the roadside attractions where people just pull over to play in the snow. Likely you can't be able to do that, and you're going to get ticketed, so watch out. And then I highlighted Wednesday and Thursday coming up, because I do expect those to be with enough snow that they will be weather impact alert days for Wednesday and Thursday, at least for this year. We'll have to watch it for the Valley. I'm Rob Carlmark. That's ABC 10 Plus.